6 is about the revolutionary matron saying interpretation is everything. What does this short cartoon mean to the parents? So this cartoon is actually the full cartoon. The original prompt was a 2-minute clip of it, but I actually want y'all guys to watch the full thing. I think there's a good discussion that could come out of it. We'll end at 2 like we tend to do, but I think it's a good conversation to be had from this cartoon because it tells you something about how images and stuff is important in these conversations. So I'm moving the overlay like Oni suggested. Danger is back. I see you guys are having some problems, I guess, with the internet, knocking y'all off and whatnot. Let me share the screen. So this was like a Russian, this is like a copy of a Russian, I think it's a Russian or German film. It's almost a 15-minute film. I think it's interesting. I want everyone to watch it, and let's really have a conversation about it after. All right.
Жил черный человек на своей земле. Щедро давала она свои плоды ему, ибо трудился он на ней в поте лица своего, как трудились и отец его, и дед, и прадед.
Но как-то раз на земле человека появился некий гость.
Гость растрогался. Какая богатая земля.
Мне чертовски повезло, что я здесь первый из зверей.
Посмотри, человек, не слишком ли бесцеремонен твой гость?
А, черт. Пока человек увлеченно приобщался к высокой цивилизации, слон сожрал все, что мог. А так как пошел дождь, то настала очередь хижины. Человек обрадовался, что высокий гость лично посетил его скромное жилище. Но у слона были свои планы.
Ты удивлен, что так получилось, человек? Погоди. Господин слон сейчас тебе все объяснит.
Видишь ли, парень, твоя черная кожа покрепче моей, да и здесь нет места для двоих, так что оставайся там, а я тут. Не скучай. Что тут происходит? Спросил неожиданно появившийся лев. Он отнял у меня хижину. Как ты смеешь клеветать на моего лучшего друга? Под суд!
Вот ты уже и под судом, человек.
Слово потерпевшему, объявил председатель лев. Господин председатель, уважаемые господа, я глубоко тронут вашим горячим желанием защитить меня от грубых нападок моего отсталого черного друга. Благодарю вас. Благодарю. Но, господа, прошу вас, будьте снисходительны к бедному черному человеку. Ему надо терпеливо объяснить, что в обмен на щедрые дары нашей цивилизации он обязан отдать то, что у него есть. Плоды, хижину, землю, а не вызывать возбуждение безответственными протестами. Именем высокого и авторитетного суда. Обвинение.
Человек, слушай же решение суда.
Умышленное нападение на господина слона. Присвоение имущества господина слона, сигарет и журналов. Виновен.
Решение наверняка будет справедливым.
Попытка вломиться в хижину.
Ведь господа звери известны как беспристрастные джентльмены, издавна самим Богом призваны охранять интересы низших рас.
Виновен по всем пунктам и заслуживает самого строгого наказания. Но, учитывая отсталость и дикость человека, суд считает возможным на первый раз простить его и разрешить ему построить себе новую хижину.
Вот видишь, какие доброжелательные судьи. Сама справедливость. Что же ты теперь будешь делать? Хорошо еще, что они не стали судить тебя за новые преступления. Воистину, они к тебе доброжелательны. А может быть, ты действительно виновен? Виновен в том, что не похож на них. Виновен в том, что это твоя земля. Ведь надо же что-то делать.
И человек решил действовать. Вот вам новая хижина. Одна на всех. Ну а теперь...
Дорого обошлось человеку знакомство со звериной цивилизацией. Но зато он многое понял и многому научился.
So, like I said, the original post had like a 2-minute clip of that short film, but I kind of wanted to, not kind of, I wanted to show the full film. I think it was something to get out of that. And so, as I go through the panelists, I want y'all to answer a few things about that. I want y'all to speak to who are the animals, who do they represent? I know Jose on the Discord said one of them was Salazar. Who do you think those animals were? And what do you think about the piece as a propaganda piece? And why would, I don't know if these were Russians or Greeks or Germans who put this together, but why would they put that together? And by the way, this is how I envision
Russian.
media. Pardon me?
The Soviet Union.
Soviet Union, okay. By the way, this is how I envision media within a curriculum where you're trying to propagandize your people to be something else. I kind of envision short films like that. Just saying. Let me start with Observing Immigrants. What did you see in that film? Did you recognize who the animal characters were?
Not from a historical point of view. I mean, we saw religion, we saw politics, we saw law or justice. I'm not really, and I don't know what the other ones were, except the elephant maybe being a white man or Europeans. I don't know, but outside of that, I thought it was very interesting. The whole theme that the black man has to, be clever and not be exploited. And to take himself out of the predicament of being exploited by Europeans. And he allowed them to let their greed basically destroy them. And when they were at their weakest point, like, what I saw like after the pandemic, I thought that was the weakest point for the Europeans that we should have as a diaspora and as Africa to make our step towards making Africa stronger. Instead, Black Americans decide to separate themselves and become xenophobic. So in this case, I like that he saw their weakness and then, understood that it had to be manipulated to get rid of them once and for all, because under their system, he was never going to win, And I think as people, we should know by now under this system, when you try to do something in the law, they'll change a lot, especially here in America. I think America especially plays the game of cat and mouse with Black people and rights and human rights and all that stuff. Once there's a law and you can get by the law, they'll simply change the law. They'll just do the things to make themselves always come on top. And I think it was Bukhari maybe that says, the Europeans just doing what they do. I mean, they're creating a world where they benefit from it completely. So, it was a beautiful film. It's interesting. I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting as well. Gas them up. I'm curious to hear from you what you saw in this. I know you have an interesting outlook on these things. What did you see in that film?
It just kind of shows a lot of the history of the Black man in terms of engaging with the Western system. I really see Kanye West in this of recent.
Talk about it.
He thinks he's free, and they let him know you can't build an empire within our empire. So, I mean, I think the video is self-explanatory, so I don't have much I'm hoping
All right.
if you get a chance, if you can email it to me, I'd really like to have it.
Yeah, no
When
problem.
you
I can do
can-
that.
Yeah.
I can do that. Let's hear from Danger Daring. Danger Daring, what did you see in that video? Could you recognize who the animals, like what nations or peoples the animals represented?
I'll be honest, no, actually I didn't. Uh, but I do. I want to say something off what the young lady has said prior. But for what I have seen is the first thing is that in the dialogue he's spoken as him observing the African man, and this is what I see a lot even today, even at the job I work at, where white people watch me and see how I move and see how I do things. Like white people, I mean, not black people, always watching the ways of black people. And I think TikTok is the biggest way they watch how we eat, how we drink, how we talk. And this further shows that the person was observing this person in order to figure out how to maneuver around what this man had. And the second thing is that uh, even with this film, they did not show the characters as like who they truly are. They show them as animals to still make it feel like, or I'm sure this is a white audience, for so they won't have no guiltiness or anything like that. And I would say like the third thing was that once it's all figured out, he actually did something about it instead of just talking about it. And
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah, and that's what black people too afraid to die, and black people too afraid to get a confrontation because they just are scared of just dying. I think I'm gonna be honest with this. I think a lot of black people are I would say a lot of black people are mentally weak, so they don't take any type of progressive type of action to anything. But as this example, this African man, he took a progressive way and he ended up still having his home. Oh, and the fourth thing I should have mentioned this. Yes, but white people always giving vices to us. Okay, oh, let me get you porn. Oh, let me give you some drugs. Oh, you know what? Let me give you this TV. Oh, let me give you this dice game. Like they always giving vices. Oh, let me set this casino right here. Let me set this liquor store in your neighborhood. Let me set this Popeyes up here. I do love Popeyes, but let me set this Popeyes up in your neighborhood. They always giving us vices to distract us and just to distract and conquer. So that was another thing too I seen. And that's all I seen. That's all I observed like from watching this. It's actually really nice, even though they don't really speak that much. I like it a lot.
And something that you had said, I don't know if anybody had ever seen a video or a screenshot of the U.S. Army showing the Afghanis porn. Like they had a Playboy magazine, and the soldier was in a helicopter, and he was just going through the Playboy magazine for a bunch of like Afghanis standing up outside the thing, and I was like, well, he know that they're Muslim, but being the opposing force, he knew that he can just show this stuff to them in a effort to corrupt these people. I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's a war tactic, and they know the
Exactly.
weakness. Yeah, they know the weaknesses. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they use the vices like of anybody, the weakness of anybody and their vices, and that's what they play on. So you're right about that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think black folks are susceptible to feel good type stuff, and
Yes.
they always come with the feel good. They come with, I mean, they literally went to Africa with magic, right? Pulling coins out of people's hands
True.
and wowing the Africans and all that old shit, right?
Very true.
They like to come with that kind of stuff to people who are not on the same level of development with them. They like to do it, and they still do this kind of stuff. They still give us that feel good stuff. They make us feel like we make Twitter hot, right?
Exactly. Sure do.
Meanwhile, Twitter is selling for billions of dollars and all kind of stuff, and we ain't getting a dime of it, right? They like that feel good type of stuff. With that said, let me go to let me welcome in the lovely revolutionary matron this week. Matron, how are you?
I'm good. How's everybody doing this week?
I'm good.
I'm good as well too. Thank you for
Good.
asking. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm with
Good.
my niece and my nephews, and so I had to put them down to come get on because I'm glad you guys decided to talk about this week because it really caught my attention.
I hope you didn't kill them when you say put them down. No, I'm just kidding. Matron.
Wait, he kidding? He don't hope you ain't kill him.
Interpretation is
children,
everything.
yum.
Interpretation is everything. What does this short cartoon mean to you?
It had, and it still has, so many messages. I feel like gas them up, I've just been looking at and analyzing it. But on a surface level, for an African understanding, is that we are the only true man, because everybody else, all the other nations represented, were some type of animal, whether it was a predatory animal, a powerful animal, an animal that we've dominated, whatever other kind of nations that came to do business with us that we were hospitable to. We were the only true man with moral conscience and a sense of right and wrong. We were hospitable and kind, and they came and they thought that their consumable trinkets entitled them to our full resource. And they then used laws and their ingenuity in an attempt to completely co-opt and consume everything we built. We build a house, they take over. I mean, like, this was our story, right? And what it represented for me is that their civilization, or having a civilization organized by them that they run and control, will not serve us. We have to come into the knowledge and full understanding that we are the only man, and that only we can do this. And that sometimes you have to burn down something that you have built that might be beautiful, just so that you can catch all your enemies and totally purge them from the land. And I'll land it there.
Girl, you better speak. Yeah, you speaking the truth.
I appreciate that for sure. I also want to point out something too in that video. When the African had a chance to sit down and study his story, that's when he came up with a plan, right? Not partying and bullshit. That didn't get him the plan. He sat down somewhere, he reflected on his situation, and he came up with a plan. The plan he came up with, to me, was the Haitian plan. So I'm going to throw it to Azuli next. To me, the Haitian plan was get your enemies fighting amongst each other. Azuli, what say you to all that? Unmute your mic, brother.
Yeah. Have a good night, bro. Yeah.
This guy's still soliciting out here? God damn.
Yo, it's funny that,
night, bro.
yo, what is wrong with y'all, man? God, I'm at the gym, son. I'm leaving the gym right now. Anyway.
Oh, you by gym. Sorry.
Yeah, you live in gym.
yo, you see? That's why black people can't get nowhere. You see? What I observe in this video is that the same thing they did in that video at that time, 1963, is the same thing they did this year with the I think the Russian used almost the same stuff. All right, good night, fellas. To use the same stuff to get us on their corner. Like I don't know if it was they used the same strategy. So what I see is that they know the truth. When they're fighting with each other, they'll put each other out to see it. That's what they're doing to get your coins. But at the end of the day, they probably do the same thing to us. But what I like about that video is the way they drew the black brother. They didn't draw him in a caricature. They didn't make him look. They actually made him look decent and very powerful.
Exactly.
For 1963.
He was the human, and these other folks were the animals, right?
Yeah. So I looked at it. I was like, yo, the black man, even, you know how sometimes they make you look primitive. You got a bow in your nose and you hunting. They made them really human, really caring, really giving, and they came and ate everything and destroyed everything. So it's like we've been going through this since the 1960s prior to that. And we still, how come the brothers don't get it? At the end, what the matron said with the what happened, sometimes you have to burn you have to start over. throw everything away and start over. But I really did like the way they drew the brother, and then they didn't make it like they drew how he cared for he built the houses. They didn't make it look like it was primitive. It's like, and that was crazy. It's like the same thing. Anybody saw the movie Miracle at St. Anna's by Spike Lee? Like when the brothers were
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
When the brothers were going in Italy, and to tell them to be like, yo, black man, what you doing in this war? They don't love you. This is what they doing to you. Why are you here? So in a way, they will tell on each other when they're fighting with each other. But when they teaming up, they will never give you that type of knowledge.
You're right about that, because this is the Cold War, and this is Cold War propaganda, right?
Yeah. So because they wanted to, they gave you, they tell you the truth on each other. But when they are uniting to get everything from you, they'll never tell you this. So, but I gotta give them their credit. The way they did the brother looks for 1963 when America was doing what's the shit, jigaboos and coons, zip coons. That was crazy. I really like that. So, yeah, that's all I have to say.
So Zulu was propagandized by the Soviets here, just so y'all know.
What?
Well, you say you really loved it. So you were the target audience by the Russians, by the Soviets, and you liked it. So it worked, right?
So no, I'm trying to say, are you saying that in a good, positive way, or are you saying that I got suckered?
I'm kind of saying both in a sense. In a weird way, I'm kind of saying both. I'm saying that they targeted this to the African 60s who were fighting for their independence and all that kind of stuff. And it one of the first questions I had was, well, why would they say this? And I remember the history, and I know, like Afro Native World said in the chat, it's a socialist propaganda to win over the African. And we're looking at this, 60 years later, and some of us like it. But it means that their juju, their propaganda juju was strong, right?
But Goku, they didn't really win any African, because most African then goes toward them. But was there a lie in what they were saying? Because the only Caribbean country that went communist was Cuba, and I think did Grenada was about to, or Guyana with Maurice Bishop. Which country was that? Grenada. They stopped that shit cold in the west side of the earth. So did it work? Did these Africans buy into this? Did they believe they were this? Actually,
a lot of African leaders were socialists, though.
How many, Goku?
I mean, I don't know the raw number, but seemingly many were socialist leaning, at least. I mean, even Kwame Ture and them was talking about socialism.
So what happened? So what?
Yeah, they was talking about socialism.
You have propaganda, but in the 60s, how many people had televisions? And at that time, most of the Caribbean was not getting independence. So who saw this video, and how many people did?
So, yeah, this is crazy.
Let's hear from...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Matron, go ahead.
I was just going to also say that even if they were internally socialist and understood that they too were a man, or that they were the only man, which is one of my main conclusions, that they still need a tool to be able to do business with other nations that is equitable. So this is a good starting point, but then there's that next step. That's why us being able to think for ourselves is so important. Well, go ahead.
Matron, should we take from the old saying, chew the meat, spit out the bones? Should we take from this that the strategy is to is like what Haiti did, get these powers to fight amongst themselves, right? And you get from under them while they're squabbling. Should we take that at least from the film?
Absolutely, we should, because they're going to fight amongst themselves. Right. We have consistently and historically been their pressure valve, and we're the ones that actually hold all the resources. They only get strong against us because they come together against us. White is an inclusionary status to the exclusion of the African. Always has, always will be.
Thank you for that, Matron. Who am I missing? Buana, what say you?
I thought it was an interesting video. I thought it was a very, very good video. And I think that people, you don't necessarily even have to speak the language to understand the cartoon and the implications of the cartoon. So I would understand why the revolutions that happened in Africa was so effective in what they did, because you could bring this into an African village and show them this actual cartoon in the 60s, and people would be inclined to fight after it because they would get some political understanding without actually even going through the process of reading books and doing all that things. You could use these symbolisms in terms of, and use the analogies in it to really educate people in terms of what's going on in a very primitive, let me say primitive, in a very elementary way. You don't even have to speak the language. And what's understood in the video is, if you allow these people to come in and do certain things, here's what's gonna happen. And I found the different animals. I draw some conclusions on who the different animals were. And in terms of this person, he could
Talk
be
about that. Talk about that. Who are the
the,
different animals? I know America's the elephant, right?
yeah, America is the elephant, mainly because when you see the CIA in Africa, you usually was pale and had the shades, them glasses, them darkers. We call them darkers in the Bahamas. They would usually wear them, and the alligator who had the monocle. For me, that's a representation of Germany, because the Germans, the Germans and the English, but in particular the German businessman, he used to had the monocle, that one eye glasses and things like that. That was his style. You know what I mean? That was his style. The the British, I had a problem with really finding out whether the alligator was the British, or the
I
or the
think the
lion.
eagle was the British.
No, the weasel was the French,
Oh, yeah, right. The French, yeah.
right? Because he was wearing a hat. But I was trying to distinguish whether the alligator was either the Germans or the British. But I decided that the lion was the British, because if you go downtown, if you go downtown London in particular, I forget something circus, you would see the representation of all the lions that was around in that square area, as far as the
Yeah, that's Piccadilly.
Piccadilly Circle, and then also the stogie. The stogie is a representation of Churchill. Churchill used to like to walk around with that British cigar. So I figured that's the British. That have to be the British. The Italians, it's interesting that Italians represent the hippo in two fronts,
Rome.
because Rome, and it's in Italy. So that's the that's the Italians. And really and truly, all of these different nations, one time or another, was inside of Africa doing their establishment. But my problem with the video is the Russians take themselves out of it, because they wasn't a part of the colonization expansion into Africa, but they still colonizers. I ain't letting them off of the table that easy. Because you're not gonna tell me workers of the world unite and that's the end of the story. Because I don't want to put Marxism into Africa, because for me Marxism is problematic too. That gotta go too. That gotta go too. So yes, there's some truths in the cartoon itself, and the fact that it has a high appeal to even illiterate people. You don't have to even be able to read to understand what's going on. But my problem still is putting a Russian or Marxist solution to an African problem. Now, yes, at the end of the day, he did get rid of them and all that stuff like that. But that's still a Marxist solution to the problem. I don't know what an African solution to the problem would be. It may be burning them out. Who knows? You know what I mean? But I figured the bias is still in the cartoonist creating the problem. I like the fact that he did actually sit down and plan. But what was most important to his plan is he just didn't sit with the idea in his head. He executed it. And I think that that's where we stop. We stop short of the execution part of whatever ideas is in our minds and our brain to solve whatever problem we may have. Most people don't even get up to the plate to take a shot, to bat. And I think that he went beyond the plan or the idea and he went straight to the execution part of it. Because I thought he was just gonna let the animals fight amongst themselves and let the animals basically destroy one another. But the fact that he did take action with the flames and decided to burn down the friggin' bloody house, that was a good thing for me. You know what I mean? But like I say, I still have an issue because at the end of it, I don't want to put a Marxist solution or a Russian solution to an African that would into what befalls Africa. The Africans need to solve out the African problems with an African solution, not the Russians. But that's my only issue. But I love the video.
What would you call an African solution though? I'm just curious.
That's interesting. That's interesting. In Tanzania, Julius Nyerere wrote a book called Ujama, okay, Ujima, something like that. He wrote a book called Ujima. Now, this was his interpretation of socialism. For me, I still have a problem with his interpretation of socialism, even though he decided to put a Tanzanian solution based or a solution to what was befalling this country. It still had socialistic implications inside of it. You know what I mean? I think as yourself and others, where we were to go on the ground and see what the difficult problems are, the different problems that befalls, the country itself. You have to sit down and then plan and strategize and then execute what the solution would be. Because one size doesn't fit all. If I'm in Tanzania, my solution to a problem that befalls Tanzania may be different than the solution that I would have for Zimbabwe, with them going off of the American standard and using their own gold coins to solve the inflation crisis in Zimbabwe. So it varies. It's just a not a one fit one
So,
one.
so the Marxism can work nonetheless. In since you said it varies, maybe Marxism can work in one or two places.
Tell me where's it worked Barbados. Tell me where it worked.
Oh no, I said maybe it can work for Africa.
But Africa has tried socialism and Marxism. They've tried it. But when
But I think
Ethiopia,
I think we've been stuck on pontificating on solutions for the last 400 years, and at this rate, we'll continue for the next 400 more in terms of pontificating on what is the solution, how to implement it, when to do it, et cetera, et cetera. Like we've been talking about. I think from the time we've been on the slave ships coming here, we've been trying to figure out a solution to get off, and we've gone through history, and we're still pontificating on how to escape this nightmare, basically.
Barbados, when the Ethiopians instituted Marxism, they call it the Derg. There are hundreds of thousands of people who died in that plan with Mengistu tried to institute inside Ethiopia. Even the so-called Haile Selassie died in the whole Marxism kind of game they was trying to play in Ethiopia.
But how many people died during? How many hundred thousand died during capitalism? Like, what are you saying?
I'm not saying that capitalism is the perfect solution either. I'm saying that it has to be an African solution.
But what this solution is telling you, you got to get the boot off your ass. That's it. That's what you have to do first. But what other solution than get the freaking monkey off your back?
No, the video is actually showing you that it was the African right here. The African came up with his solution. It wasn't. They didn't show you him being whispered to by, some animal that represents the USSR or something like that.
Or the white Jesus.
After
Figure it out. Go ahead.
After you see the people think the hard part, when it is hard, is to get the monkey off your back. But that's just one part of the fight. The other part of the fight is rebuilding, creating something that is.
Bro, we get to that part when we get to that part after we get the monkey off your back.
No, that's
like,
not
come
true.
on.
No,
I think he's trying to say. I think he's trying to say that the fact that like African solution is it's not one dimensional. Like is like because we are a unique group of people. We are not the same, even though we share the same tree. And I think that's what he's trying to say. That's the hardest part. Like how to please everyone that is African.
I think that's BS. I think that's
Yeah.
BS. We are all the same.
And that's fine. But after you get the monkey off your back, you know what's gonna happen when the people don't get their immediate needs that the so-called
Exactly, because we have that now.
That the so-called colonizers was facilitating for you. You know what they're gonna do? They're gonna blow your head off, and they can say, "Bring back them same colonizers."
That's part of the buildup.
That's a hypothetical.
That was it's happened. Look at the Congo. Look at the
Congo didn't fight for shit.
What's the leader of the Congo name? I ain't worrying about you, man. You want Starker. What's the leader of the Congo name?
Lumumba.
Lumumba. When Lumumba said what he said in front of the Belgian king or prince, and he wanted to recreate something inside the Congo, what happened to him? The same thing happened in Zimbabwe.
Lumumba didn't fight. Lumumba got killed, bro.
Don't worry about it, bro.
Did Lumumba not get killed?
I'm done.
But the Europeans are always pulling strings to create corruption and all that stuff anyway. So even if he had a successful plan, they always fight to win.
Yeah, that's the thing I think Buana is trying to say to Zuli is when you get these folks off your back, if you don't have a plan for what happens next, your people will tear you to pieces. Because if they can't get what they need immediately after you get this man off your back, you know what I'm saying? So you have to plan. You can't just plan for, well, we're going to get them off our back and then we will see what it is.
So that sounds like we're never going to get them off our backs then at this rate. Because if these are poor countries that can't provide the basics for the people,
well, you run the risk, Marcus
because
Garvey,
the Europeans
you
have
run
left,
the
then
risk
that
of
means
this.
we have no choice. We're never going to.
No, Marcus Garvey. No, Marcus
You
Garvey.
run the risk of this. You run the risk of if you get the man off your back and you cannot come through for your people will want to go right back under that man again.
Marcus Garvey, Barbados. If I want independence, right? If I like how the Bajans wanted independence, right? I have to prepare my people for independence. That means I must have enough doctors, I must have enough teachers, I must have enough engineers, etc., to ensure that if these so-called cocksuckers who I've been relying on for years and years and years goes, I can have enough people to fill that void and facilitate a country in functioning correctly to meet the needs of my people. But if I don't prepare in advance and I let them go, what is going to happen to my country is going to fall into disrepute.
Okay, so
I like what Bakari said. Why don't we talking about socialism and Marxism and all this stuff? Why don't we just use Garveyism, what a black man created? But with that, I'll go to Oni. Oni, what say you?
Yeah, I'll say that I don't think it's a fair criticism to say that this was a Marxist propaganda because it didn't really end with any sort of Marxism, you know. I think it was actually a pretty interesting.
It was Marxist by omission. They don't represent the USSR in this.
Well, yeah, but I think because like the conversation was in the chat about because if it were the case that they were representing the countries that the scramble for Africa, right, then it would make sense not to include the USSR because one, Russia wasn't a part of the scramble for Africa, partially, but also the USSR, the Soviet Union, wasn't necessarily a part of this, the Belgium conference because the USSR was, I think it was like 1920 or something like that,
But only, isn't that the brilliance of it though? We didn't scramble to carve up Africa, and we're trying to get you on our side, so to speak. And by the way, we didn't chop up Africa. We weren't a part of that. Isn't that brilliant? A part of the brilliance of the propaganda?
Well, the thing is that, I think people familiar with Soviet propaganda or are people familiar with socialism, unfortunately, it comes to how much you believe that they believe what they're saying. So if you like if we go by the argument that white folk are just disingenuous, period, then of course it would be like, yeah, they're just disingenuous and they're just pulling a fast one on you, right? But if we're convinced that realistically there were white people trying to implement a different system type thing, which again it comes into, well, why wouldn't you believe the Christian lie? Why wouldn't you believe the Muslim lie, right? But like again, like like the idea is, are there Christians that don't believe in are there Christians that believe in the brotherhood of man? Are there white people who actually believe in the brotherhood of man? Are there Arabs who actually believe in the brotherhood of man? It's possible, just like this, workers of the world unite. Are there white people who and realistically, I would say this, that just to go off of that same topic, which is the Soviet Union was really about hurting the West. It's really about fighting the West. And so in that sense, it's like, yes, there is that omission, but it makes a lot of sense if you are trying to weaken the white man. Right, sorry, to weaken the all right, so we sometimes say the third world, we call ourselves the third world, and then we say America's the first world. What we kind of forget is that in this first world, third world lingo, there was a second world lingo too, right? So people used to say the USSR and the countries under the influence of the Soviet Union, or the powerful countries of the powerful socialist countries, were the second world, right?
Yeah.
And so in that sense, right, the second world had a very, really wanted to turn the third world against the first world, because the first world and the third world, and the first world wanted to turn the third world against the second world. So the propaganda, it's not like you're not supposed to. If you're making propaganda, you're not supposed to turn it like the idea that they should be like, oh no, third world, the second world's bad too, and they're the second world. Like, it would just be like, it wouldn't pass, like they wouldn't finance it. And that's another thing that I wanted to point out, because I was like, this cartoon's cool. I'm thinking I would show my son it, right? But I'm also thinking, two, I think people should have should do African subtitles or subtext, or not subtitles, dub, African dub, so that like Swahili or Yoruba, whatever. And then I also think that it should be reanimated, remastered, to the point where it's modern day animated, right? But and to that note, I would say that is a costly enterprise, and it's probably costed a lot more, honestly, if we're being honest, back in those days. So when we're asking people, hey, your propaganda is not making you look like the bad guy, it's like, well, yeah, because I'm spending how many, it might not look like much, this animation style, we could do this for cheap, this same animation style pretty cheaply, right? But probably back then it kind of could have been like $1 million, in today's value, to make something like this bad, obviously, right? That said, yeah, nobody's going to spend $1 million, or not, maybe not $1 million, but still, no one's going to spend that much money to tell you, oh, I'm the bad guy, and it's like, yeah, you omitted it because partially, like I said, they weren't even involved per se in the scramble for Africa. But even if they were, you still, if you're making propaganda to turn people against the first world, that's what it is. Like that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, and again, if it's coming from the quote unquote second world, they should make propaganda to turn you to the second world. This is not really turning you to the second world, right? Again, if we're looking at it from eyes of the modern day, and we're just saying, let's read between the lines, 50 years later, then maybe we could say, or 60, 70 years later, right? Maybe we could say, is turning up to the first to the second world. But a lot of times, this is kind of like sophisticated propaganda that's really just turning you away from the first world. The only real like the real turning you to the second world thing is the fact that the language is in Russian. Because you're not gonna speak Russian normally if you're like a villager, and the only way you'll speak Russian is if you so on and so forth. But outside of that, I feel like this animation is just straightforward. Like, hey, you know what? You as a third worlder, the thing that you don't need is the first world, because the first world is just gonna sell you drugs. It's just gonna give you drugs. It's gonna give you pornography. It's gonna give you white women type shit. And you might, it might be cute for a second, but it's not really the thing you want. What you want are those melons. You also saw how the guy was looking at the melons. You like, yo, right? But yeah, so I don't think it's a fair criticism to be like, oh, this is the Marxist solution, because it's not. I didn't see that here as somebody familiar with Marxism.
I have a quick question.
Wait, let me just say this. The only thing I want to say that I really appreciate about this film was how the man was smiling, when the other countries were fighting with each other. That's all I'm saying.
I want to respond when the sister's done.
Yeah, Marcus Garvey is away, and then gas him up. Go ahead.
No, my quick question is that why do you feel we have to be propagandized to turn against the first world or even the second world? I think as victims of these two things, why should we have to be told they're bad? I mean, we were experiencing the worst of the worst. And why would you in the 60s coming out of slavery and all this other stuff have to be told the obvious? I think the video more showed the solution to escape from the oppression, rather than having you feel that you have to turn against the first and second world. So why do you think that it had to be propagandized?
Wait, so can I answer that, or?
Yeah, I posed it as a question to you.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was just asking because all right. So, why do I feel? Oh no. I mean, we have to recognize that human beings, they're not as sophisticated as we let them off to be. You know what I mean? So, like for instance, my son, like for instance, corporal punishment. Just striking, hitting somebody, right? Like your kid is not going to say, you know what, this is a bad thing for me to be hit, and therefore I need to protest, blah, 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 blah. That's not a natural reaction. Whatever you do to a child, whatever, right? They're going to think that's the right thing, or that they're just going to live with it, and they're going to love the person, even if the person's abusive, for the longest while until they reach functional adult. And even then, depending on the circumstances they grow up in or the circumstances they develop in, they're going to see it as
not children.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're not children.
No, exactly. So what happens is that when you grow up in a society or a circumstance, you're going to adapt to what the adults are like the values and the morals of what the adults are doing, and in so doing, you will like, it's not that you are a child, but essentially you grow into an adult that is docile, right? So like for instance, like how you were saying, all of us wanted to like you say, everybody just says, hey, let's just go get an education. Let's just go get an education from this Western system. And we don't really question it because that is what we are taught. Those are the values that we have. And so even though this education is imposed on us by foreigners and by Westerners, we just say this is what it is. So there's no intrinsic, inherent, I'm going to protest. Now there are exceptions, but the exceptions are ridiculed and made to be ridiculous in these sort of societies. So it's really not so complicated that everybody, when they reach adulthood, just says, you know what, everything is stupid, and here's how we all fight together. What happens is that like it's not that it's not really normal. So that's why you would need propaganda. But that's what I would say.
Let's go to Gas and then Bakari.
I just want to quickly say, for me, I think this is why I'm very careful, when we use modern day constructions and we project them backward. Russians are not white. Soviet people are not white, right? And that was the whole premise of the presentation that on the Black Pentagram was with the Romans and the Greeks not being white, right? They're not the same people. Not in any chance in any respect. So we have to be very careful because I think we end up, throwing out a lot of babies with bathwaters if we take that approach that all white is white and blackity black and all this other stuff that we hold on to. Uh, if you look at it, even the idea of Soviet, the first Soviet republic was in Bavaria. It's in Germany, right? Even the people there are not following. They had a czarist system, the Caesar, right? They had the Caesar, and it's short for the czar. Um, and they destroyed that bloodline. That bloodline was killed with Anastasia. I mean, I can get deep, right? It goes into that Moorish bloodline. There's you guys can look into the African presence. I can send you. I might even do a show on this on the Black Pentagrams. The African presence, or in the Byzantine side, all the way into you know um, what we call Russia today. A lot of Moors were in that region, and a lot of them, have a mixed bloodline, and it's not a coincidence that they were murdered. And the people who murdered them all came from Germany, because this idea of Marxism. Remember, Marx is a German. What the hell is a German ideology being used in Russia? How is that possible? No one ever stops to question this. So even what we think of as the so-called Soviet or whatever we're assuming is right, that's not even their ideology. It's a German playbook, and it failed in Germany. And these extremists, who were in many senses of the words, they were terrorists. They were blowing up things, attacking the Tsar. There were numerous attacks on his life before they finally, these psychos, killed and destroyed the bloodline of that Tsar family. So, me, I'm always thinking a cult. We have to be very, very, in my opinion, very, very careful when we're just, assuming, oh, they're just white people. No, that's a lie. That they're not just white people, and there's a lot of things that are going on. Like I said, for me, I'm always looking at that occult angle. We talked about industrialism and sacrifice. Look at all the millions of serfs that they starved to death and allowed to die. Yet you wouldn't just let millions of your people just die. It's interesting. Every time that Marxist playbook is used, whether it's China or it's Russia, millions of people have to die in order for your industrial, power to rise. Just the most interesting thing. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong, but let's just be very careful of always using these categories. You're black, you're white. These are modern day inventions. But that's just my 3 cents on that.
I appreciate that, Gas. Let's hear from Bakari.
What's up? Look, I'm back. I ain't gonna be on here long. I just heard you. I didn't even see the thing. I just heard people talking about socialism and all of that. You know what? You will never, ever, 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 ever get free. You're trying to use other people's ideas that they created for themselves. You can argue over socialism, capitalism, and the white folks from Russia, Marxism, because yes, gas them up. They white, because Vladimir Putin is white. But anyway, I don't know why you like to separate them. But anyway, you can, anything those people created, it's for them. We're sitting around arguing, trying to see, well, the people that did all of this stuff to us, did they create a system that's going to free us from them? And whenever I hear that, I always ask the same.
What did the Russians do to you? What are you talking about? They're white. What white Russians enslaved you, Brother Bakari?
Oh, well, okay. So I'm going to say it again, right? So whenever I hear this argument, I always ask the same question, and everybody, then Koku just repeated it, and everybody always ignored it. Black people don't want to be free because they don't want to use nothing a black man created. I will ask again, you arguing over stuff white people created, why not use Garveyism? They act like they didn't even hear Koku when he said it, because they got to keep trying to figure out, can socialism and Marxism be okay? and gas them up. No Russians enslaved none of my people, as far as I know anyway. To answer your question, I don't want you to think I was ignoring you and being rude to you.
No, not at all. Not at all.
No, I just want you to, I didn't want you to think I was trying to be rude to you. I like to talk shit to you, but I wasn't trying to be rude to you. But once again, nobody ever even talk about it. And once I said, and once I finish, Black people will go back to arguing about what's best for us, socialism or capitalism. We don't even think about something a Black person created. We don't even think about creating our own. Let's use what the white people did. The white people there, it worked for them. Then you can show them the failures of socialism. And it doesn't matter. It's better than capitalism. See, capitalism created evil because we were the capital. Okay, well, go look in the socialist countries and see how Black people were treated in those socialist countries. So what's the difference? So now let's think of something that Black people can do.
Black people were treated way, in terms of advancement, Black people advanced way better in Russia. There's so many documentaries. As a matter of fact, there's a documentary of Black people from the South who went to Russia in the 1900s, and the guy came back. His grandson, the grandson came back and met his cousins in America, and he was like, yo, I'm a millionaire in Russia. I'm top level. I'm not coming back here to stay in America. You know, those are my cousins, but they can stay here.
And that's good. You'll find a lot of those stories. You can find 5 Black people, go somewhere and live around 5 million white people. It's going to be a difference. But watch this. But I can't ever remember this professional boxer name. Roy Jones Jr. was his promoter. And he was from Russia, but he was Black. And they thought he was going to be good, but he couldn't take a punch. But anyway, they talked to him. And when he was interviewing, he always spoke on how bad Black people was treated in Russia. He was born and raised there. He always talked about that. See, we're always looking to find to say, this set of white people is just a little different.
The Russians are not white people.
Okay, that's what you say. They got this European DNA, Neanderthal DNA. They white. See, you say that. Vladimir Putin is white. That's just a fact.
He's not white. That's not a fact.
YouTube has
Vasily Lomachenko,
videos of Black Americans, generations going to Russia and benefiting from Russia.
Okay, I never,
as Gasmup said, there are. You can go on YouTube and see videos of it.
And guess what? And that is open. I'm going to say it again. You can probably find some Black people that went to the white utopia in the United States, Washington State, and Oregon, and benefited. It's easier to go when it's 10 of you and 10 million of them, because you're not a threat. And once again, like I said, we're gonna figure out a way to say their system is better than anything that we can do. Black people don't want to be from under these people. That's the problem. Black people don't want to be. The majority of Black people don't want to be. The majority of Black people is trying to find some white people that can treat them nice.
Because white people invented the nation state. Garveyism is not going to run a nation state, Brother Bakari. I'm no disrespect to Marcus Garvey, but Garveyism is a theory that's not going to run a nation state.
Gas, I got you. I know you. I got you, right? But see, when you was talking, I let you go on. You talking about who ain't white and all that. I ain't even interrupt. But I'm going to stick to what I said. You say it won't run a nation state because we ain't trying to create a nation state and use it. We're trying to be under them. That's why we can easily say, we can find YouTube videos where Black people say they were treated nice in Russia. How many Black people were in Russia? They were not a threat. I can show you videos. Like I said, I can show. Study Oregon. Study Washington State. Study those states. They were the white utopia. Matter of fact, California part of it. And you will find the few Black people that went out there and they would say they did okay because they were not a threat. But once you become, and enough of you come there, fool around and let 5 million, 10 million Black people go to Russia. All those people with those nice fantasy videos, all of that gonna change because you become a threat.
No, that's not true.
I'm not telling nobody what to do. The only thing I'm saying is black people don't want to get from under these people. Black people is happy in their position. All you got to do is just listen to them talk. And I hear the mic.
But boy, Brother Bakari, why do you think black people will become a threat? Like, I think we're not understanding that Russian black people become absorbed in the system. So within 2 generations, that person might have a little dark hue to them, but you wouldn't really be able to distinguish them from the average Russian.
The only thing I can say, and I'm going to get his name, and the next time we do a video, I'm going to tell you the name, and I'm going to let you the person that was born and raised. I ain't talking about nobody who they say moved there and came back and gave you their family. I'm the person who was born and raised.
And I'm telling you, a person who was born and raised there too.
Even when him and Koloff, when they spoke in Russian, he was talking about how disrespectful he was to the black guy. What's the other little Russian guy named who fought the African guy? What did they call him? In our country, you're not the champion, you're the champion. But we look for a reason to find something good because we don't think we can do nothing on our own. We don't think that.
No, I think
most black people want to be under them. That's why we look to find and we want to differentiate. They don't differentiate. And for anybody who don't think Russia had a foothold and did any colonizing in Africa, I just tell you, look it up for yourself.
But what did Russia do in Africa? Can you tell me what they did in Africa? Because look,
just look it up.
I have looked it up. Maybe you can help me. I can't find it. I've been to many libraries, Brother Bakari. I'm lost. Help me out.
No,
but what I'm saying is,
can you tell the difference between a German and a Russian if they don't speak?
No.
Say that again.
Can you tell the difference between a German and a Russian if they don't speak?
No.
Again, I'm not going into these type of.
Yes or no?
Listen, hold on, Azuli. You see, what you're doing is no different. It's like saying, can you tell the difference between a Nigerian and a Jamaican? You guys are taking, and this is why I say, get out of Babylon. We're mentally in a clinch with these people. Whiteness, because if whiteness was the way you guys are describing it, then Russia would not be killing Ukrainians. Keep in mind, more Russians have killed more Americans than they have killed any Africans with World War I and World War II. So what are we talking about here? I think, look, I'm not telling you that in the modern day that you don't have racist skinhead gangs in Russia. Of course you do. And you don't have racist skinhead gangs in Germany. I'm just saying historically, when we're looking at the narrative that should be said as intellectual people, we should be able to make distinctions to say, listen, this thing that we are existing in today called whiteness is a fiction. That doesn't mean it's a fiction that can't kill you. Yeah, it's a fiction that can kill you, but it's still a fiction. And we shouldn't sit down there. Go ahead.
Yes. Bakari, hold on. Razuli, hold on. Because we're kind of extending this prompt here, and I want to be done at 2 a.m. I will say this, guys. Do me this favor. Come up with a prompt on this topic here so we could have a fuller discussion just on what you and Bakari are going back and forth on right now. Add a video to the prompt, and we'll have a full discussion on the next Shoot the Breeze about. This is why I said, too, I like the subject matter idea that I have for Shoot the Breeze now. One of the things we could talk about is propaganda, colonialism, all that kind of stuff, too. So that's, what is whiteness? What isn't? So
not a problem. I'll send it to you. But remember, we discussed this with the Romans and the Greeks and whiteness. We talked about this.
I know. So you guys could check out that video on Gas Them Up channel. But if you want to have that conversation here, we could have Bakari, Razuli, all of us here. We could do it on Shoot the Breeze next week as well. All right. Let me go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 7 for time's sake.
Yeah. I'll let you go. But the name of the boxer is Ismail Salak. That's the name of a Russian boxer.
Ismail Salak.